Hello again, it's me Mandala, and I'm back to share another open world buildcraft video. So today I'm back to share yet again another warrior build for open world, and today we're going to focus on the Bladesworn. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about Bladesworn and adapting to the changes over the years of how they keep uh, retooling this class to be something else and something new and something different. And so I finally settled on this more like paladin style Bladesworn build, very tanky, very self-sustaining, very defensive, with powerful burst options via Dragon Trigger. And so I'm going to do a quick pull on the Golem, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so there you have it. And so don't freak out yet. I know the damage number seems really low, but we're going to talk about why the DPS number on the Golem is a little bit lower than what you'd expect from a bursty power class like Bladesworn, why I have it set up this way, and why it's actually a lot stronger in the open world than what this number implies. So a lot of people think with Bladesworn that the best way to play it is just to go like full DPS, just completely like guns blazing, all offensive, um, and just hit these huge numbers on the golem. So if you run like a traditional like berserker setup, you can do some pretty crazy things with Bladesworn. So like, I'm just gonna do this really fast. So you see like 37k burst right from the beginning, and you can do that faster than what I just did. You can get it to like 40, 45 if you set up the build properly for burst, but this is kind of an illusion. If you keep doing DPS on the golem, that number is going to drop considerably, and you're going to go down to like 14, 15k of sustained damage with this setup. And so I wanted to talk about why I have it set up more defensively and why I think that's a better gameplay fantasy and a more fun way to play Bladesworn. So to go back to, I have to despawn the golem for this. To go back to our other build, the real build, and I'm gonna fix my, I have default dies on here, so I'm gonna fix the dies. So okay, so this build is running mostly celestial gear, so it's celestial armor, celestial trinkets, and then it's running berserker axes. um, and so the reason we do this is because, and this is just warrior technical stuff, is Bladesworn's the only warrior elite specialization that isn't compensated with bonus precision or bonus crit chance in some form. and so we have to compensate that by losing some of our survivability and taking a lot of stuff to give us extra precision so that we can crit cap on this build. So we're also running Spear Rune of the Ranger, which is like the full precision rune set, and we're running Spear Sigil of Strength and Spear Sigil of Accuracy. And then I have the Relic of Zakiros. If you don't like the Relic of Zakiros or can't get your hands on the Relic of Zakiros, oh, hello, kitty cat going. Like if you don't want to play Secrets of the Obscure a bunch to get the Relic of Zakiros, the Relic of Vampirism is actually a good alternative to this. And you can also, if you don't want the survivability and you think you're tanky enough without either of these healing sustain relics, you could just do the Relic of the Brawler, and that'll give you a lot of bonus damage, specifically with this build, because of the stuff we'll talk about in just a second. So, almost full Celestial, very tanky, 28,000 HP, almost 3k toughness, power build. Um, and so yeah, so as far as the traits go, we're taking the strength line, the discipline line, and of course the Bladesworn line. So in the strength line, it's a pretty typical power setup. I'm taking peak performance just for the bonus damage, and because we already have a lot of tools to stay stable and to break stuns on this build with the way I have it set up. So peak performance, deal increased strike damage, physical skills further increase all outgoing strike damage for a period of time. And so what I like about the core warrior strength line here is it was kind of set up like forever ago with the like idea of anything you do defensively can be compensated for and recovered from quickly, because like for this reckless dodge, so our dodge roll does damage and gives us might, and then for peak performance, if we use our heal skill, it gives us a damage bonus after. So it kind of like, the way I think of these two traits is that they kind of compensate defensive play and allow you to recover from utilizing your defensive tools like your dodge roll and your heal skill. Next up in the line is building momentum, so burst skills restore endurance on hit, again allowing you to be defensive, restoring your endurance, giving you extra dodges, really helpful in open world. Forceful Greatsword, so this is the one that's not going to be the same as like a full DPS version, and we're taking this specifically because Bladesworn, when you don't take Unyielding Dragon, has no way to generate might really. And so in order to generate might, we're taking Forceful Greatsword, so gain power and a chance to gain might on critical strike. Double these bonuses while wielding a Greatsword or Underwater Spear. Greatsword and Underwater Spear skills recharge faster. So all you need to know is we get plus 120 power, and our crits have a chance, 50% chance, to give us a might stack. And so you'll see why this is important later. Next up is Pinnacle of Strength. Might applied to you grants more power. Great, because we're a power build, and your critical hit chance is increased. So 5% extra crit chance and more power for each stack of might. And then lastly, Berserker's Power. You can increase strike damage when you use a burst skill. This damage increase is based on your adrenaline. So if we use all 10 charges of our Dragon Trigger, it gives us a 21% damage bonus for 15 seconds, and so because we always want to charge Dragon Trigger all the way, we just have a consistent 21% damage bonus for strike damage. Yeah, okay, one second. Okay, next up is the Discipline line, and so this is a big deviation from like your typical power, like meta instance group PvE build, and you'll see why we're taking this in just a second. So the Discipline line, first up in the Discipline line, Versatile Rage, gain Adrenaline on Weapon Swap. This is really good because instead of Adrenaline on Weapon Swap, we gain Positive Flow, which allows us to build Flow. So we'll go into the way the Bladesworn is totally different from all warrior classes later. But just know this gives us Positive Flow whenever we Weapon Swap. Warrior Sprint, run faster when wielding melee weapons, great because we're using melee weapons, and deal increased strike damage when you have Swiftness. Movement skills break immobilization when used. So again, really good utility, Swiftness, and then damage buff if we have Swiftness. And it's not actual Swiftness, it's just move speed increase, but you get the idea. Next up is Fast Hands. Weapon Swap recharges faster, so instead of a 10-second recharge, it's a 5-second recharge. Very useful on Warrior. Less useful on Bladesworn, but you'll see why it's valuable when we add all this stuff together. Next up, we're taking Brawler's Recovery, so remove conditions when you weapon swap. So this is just another defensive tool we have. So because we're swapping our weapons so much on this Bladesworn build, We remove a condition every time we do that, which is really useful. Just have a passive Condi cleanse to get rid of some like get rid of conditions like minor conditions, so we don't always have to waste our Condi cleanses. Next up is versatile power. Gain might on weapon swap, burst skills, gain reduced recharge. So 15% recharge reduced on burst skills, and I'm not sure how effective that is on Bladesworn. I'm not sure if that affects the Bladesworn cooldown. Um, and then gain might on weapon swap, so we gain 2 might every time we weapon swap. Again, really good because Bladesworn needs might generation, so this helps us there. And then lastly, and this is the reason why we're taking the discipline line, is axe mastery. So gain ferocity, gain additional ferocity when wielding an axe. And axe skills gain reduced recharge and grant adrenaline when critically striking. As I forgot to mention, in the equipment tab, we're running dual axe setup, which is unusual for Bladesworn. The reason we're doing this is because I hate the Bladesworn utilities, and we'll talk about that more later. Um, but yeah, essentially, I hate the Bladesworn utilities, and I think the flow mechanic, I think specifically flow stabilizer, is just a really annoying utility to use and kind of unfun. And so I've set this build up to specifically ignore that aspect of Bladesworn and generate flow in a different way. So with Axe Mastery, every single one of our hits generates 2 flow on the axe, which is really good, so we can bypass the need to generate flow in other ways. Yeah. Okay, and so now that we're done with the discipline line, the last line I want to talk about is the Bladesworn line. So in the Bladesworn line, we get access to the gun saber. So instead of a second weapon, we have the gun saber skills, right? All these. Next up is unseen sword. So unseen sword. So swapping weapons strikes all nearby foes. And this again is partnering with all the stuff we have in the discipline line to really help us get damage and be useful even outside of Dragon Trigger. So swapping weapons strikes all nearby foes. So after delay, deliver a circular attack to foes around you, increase flow rate if it hits. So again, this generates flow, this deals damage, it synergizes really well with the fact that we weapon swap often on this build, and with the fact that Bladesworn going in and out of Dragon Trigger counts as a weapon swap. Yeah, so basically it's just the best of these 3 options. I think the other 2 are just like really bad. I think these 2 are just terrible, and there's no reason to take them. But yeah. Okay, next up is Dragon Scale Defense. Gain boons when enter Dragon Trigger, so you just gain stability when you enter Dragon Trigger so that you don't just get like immediately stunned out of it. This is definitely just like a minor quality of life thing that like they probably developed right when they developed it. They realized like, oh, you go into Dragon Trigger and just get immediately stunned, and then you're popped out of Dragon Trigger, and so it's just like really silly. So they just created stability on entry, which is useful. Next up is Fierce as Fire. I think Lush Force is actually an interesting skill, but in reality, Fierce as Fire is just easier to use and way more passive and requires less thinking. And so this just increases strike damage for each round of ammunition spent, and since all of your um, Bladesworn, everything except for the auto attack on the gun saber, is an ammo skill, this just allows you to build that up quickly, relatively quickly. And so yeah, so that's why we take Fierce as Fire. Next is Guns and Glory. Gain ferocity for a short duration when you hit with an explosion. Again, a lot of these Bladesworn skills are explosions, and so we'll pretty much have Guns and Glory permanent the whole time on this build. And then lastly, we're taking Immortal Dragon. So this is the biggest thing that I wanted to play around with when I was deciding what to do for the Bladesworn build. So the reason I want to take Immortal Dragon is because it's the only instance where warriors can get permanent protection uptime without sacrificing like a crazy amount of offensive, sorry. So it allows you to get protection without sacrificing a crazy amount of offensive value. And so the reason that is because Unyielding Dragon, all it really does is, so it's mostly just quality of life and might stacks. So Dragon Slash becomes unblockable and ignores blindness, which is just quality of life, and then gain might when you convert flow into charges. And so this basically just allows you to do like a 25 might Dragon Slash without having to think about it. It's really just like pure quality of life, and then it's a bunch of stun duration, so it's like 5-second stun for all 10 charges, which is really nice. But I think Immortal Dragon is just a really cool skill for open world. It gives us access to permanent protection, and we heal 8% of the damage we deal in Dragon Trigger, which is the majority of our damage output on this build. And so I just think this is a really great trait, and I wanted to find a way to utilize it. And because of that, because we're running this very defensively, that's why the damage seems a little low. And that's why we have to take all these things to generate might. So we're taking Forceful Greatsword, we're taking the Discipline line, um, we're taking the Superior Sigil of Strength, all to generate the might that we don't get from Unyielding Dragon. And so the benefit, though, of this setup... Oh, one second. Okay. The benefit, though, of this setup is that we're way less useless outside of Dragon Trigger. So the biggest issue with Bladesworn builds that I see people suggest is that you're kind of like, you're a Dragon Trigger, you do everything in Dragon Trigger and your Dragon Trigger hits, or you're just completely useless at all the other times. And so that goes back to that other build that I showed you right before, the one that did like almost 40k damage on the Golem burst up front. Um, Builds like that are just completely useless outside of Dragon Trigger. You just don't do anything. You hit like a wet noodle and you're super squishy, and so you just basically kind of run around waiting for your flow to generate back or for your cooldown for Dragon Trigger to come off. And so this build just allows you to feel useful and feel like you're playing Guild Wars 2 even when you're not hitting a Dragon Trigger. But yeah, so that's the traits, and when we do demo stuff, you'll see all of this work together and synergize really, really well in the open world. So I won't harp on it here. Instead, I'm going to talk about utilities and playstyle and what I think you should be doing to maximize your effectiveness on this build. So yeah, so first let's go over utilities. I'm going to summon a golem so we can talk about them. Okay, so the reason I want to do like a deeper dive on utilities is because I think this setup is really strange in the fact that I think Bladesworn is designed specifically to only function effectively when using full Bladesworn utilities, so when using Flow Stabilizer, overcharged cartridges, and, or, yeah, overcharged cartridge, overcharge, ugh, I can't speak today, overcharged cartridges, and Dragon Spike Mine. Um, but I've elected not to use these because I think they're annoying and frustrating to use, especially for me as a skill clicker. I click my utility skills with my mouse, and so just having to live over here um, on my skill bar is just really annoying for me, and I think it's kind of boring and like just not very fun. I like to actually like play the game and look at what I'm doing like in the open world and like be able to look up and not have to just constantly live on this utility bar unless I have like an actual like response to something in the game that I want to respond to, right? So instead of taking those, I've taken like um, more reactive traits. So Shake It Off, again, this is a stun break, Condi Cleanse on a charge, and so in open world this is really useful because um, it's an instant cast ability, so it doesn't interrupt your Dragon Trigger. So if I generate some flow here using the axes, you can cast this during Dragon Trigger and it won't interrupt you. And this is really valuable utility in the open world setting, especially when you're surrounded by a bunch of mobs, especially in modern Guild Wars 2, because weakness is so highly prevalent, especially in like an expansion like Secrets of the Obscure. Like just being able to instantly cleanse yourself before you swing on your Dragon Trigger can like save you from losing like over half of your damage to being weakened and doing glancing damage instead of a full hit. And so that's why we take that. Second up, we have Banner of Defense. So the reason I have Banner of Defense is because it gives us huge amount of initial barrier, initial Aegis, so we can just block an attack right when we cast it, right? But it also gives us permanent regen without even having to take the double standards trait because of all the boon duration we have from running Celestial gear. So even without taking double standards, we have access to permanent regen uptime. So again, this is just adds to the tankiness of the build. And then lastly is just Signet of Fury. So this is again compensating for the fact that Bladesworn has really low precision compared to all other warrior elite specs. And so you just kind of, when you're running Celestial gear, you have to do everything you can to get as much precision as possible. And so that's why we run the Signet Fury. That was some thunder. We'll see if you guys hear that or if my dog freaks out, but yeah. Okay. And then lastly is Tactical Reload. So this is the normal skill that everybody takes. It's kind of a must on Bladesworn, so it just recovers all of the cooldowns of your gun saber skills, and then it would also recover the cooldowns of your utility skills that have charges. So like you see I use all the charges here, and then I press Tactical Reload. Everything gets one charge back. And this just allows us to keep the cooldowns up on these gun saber abilities. And then it also doubles the rate of charges we get. So instead of getting one charge every like quarter second or whatever, yeah, one charge every quarter second, it does it 2 charges every quarter second, so you can load the gun saber twice as fast and just get a really quick dragon trigger off when that is used. So right, so really useful, really helpful. You could take other stuff in this slot if you wanted, but I think the flow of the build is really hampered when you don't take this skill. I think you just eventually you just run out of cooldowns for your blades, for your gun saber, and that's no fun. And so that's why we take this. And then of course last is mending, so physical skill, remove conditions, and heal yourself. And then we gain the peak performance buff when we do that. And so kind of talking about like the thematics of this build a little bit, instead of like the normal like samurai bursty like one swipe, like one attack, like one shot theme that's typical for Bladesworn, this is kind of more like, the way I think of it is kind of like, think like thematically strange JRPG paladin sort of deal. So just very tanky, very like quirky like appearance wise, but it basically just plays like a knight, and it's just got a little bit of like Japanese flair to it because of the gun saber. And so I think it's just a really cool fantasy. And so next we're going to go into the open world and demo it in a few places to show off the strengths of the build. So yeah, let me get us to the first thing, and then we'll talk about it more. Okay. There's an event. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is to showcase this build and like the strengths of this build is I'm going to go do the mini dungeon in Dragon's End. And so I think this just showcases the benefits of playing Bladesworn this way instead of just a fully offensive setup, and what the benefits are to having a more useful build outside of Dragon Trigger, and why that's important in general open world play. So I'm going to get us to the mini dungeon so that I can demo that. So basically, a thing that a lot of people forget about in general open world play is that you deal with a lot of like what we consider like trash mobs, like low HP, low damage, just like filler enemies. And so this build leverages and isn't hindered by the fact that you just constantly are changing targets in the open world.
The Phoenix Room. See how Void has made a mockery of our ancient trial.
And so what I like about this dungeon is, for showcasing this build, is that you can kind of see how the way we have Bladesworn set up here is because we're not just completely reliant on Dragon Trigger. We can kill mobs effectively even when we're constantly in and out of combat. And part of she's gonna keep yapping, but
Please Keep ridding this sacred place of void.
But you can see how, because of the, and here, I'll just talk about it a little bit now. So, because of the way we have this build set up, with the dual axe setup, dual axes is just a useful, useful weapon set outside of Dragon Trigger in the open world. It's just like we're allowed to do stuff. So the way we play it, the way I use it is, you press the 4 skill to get quickness, and then once you press the 4 skill, you do the whirling axe with the quickness so that it doesn't take 1,000 years like it is right here. And this generates a ton of might. So if we go to the next room,
The Jasmine Room.
and we find a big pack of enemies like this.
Void took over. Your courage will be remembered.
So because of the traits we have,
rewarded.
this just instantly generates 25 might. And then that was a poorly aimed Dragon Trigger, but you can see how you just build up really quickly on this build and you never have flow problems. So that's the problem when you run flow stabilizer and you're too reliant on flow stabilizer, is every time you break combat, your flow generation completely goes away. And so eventually, because this has a 30-second recharge, you're just going to run out of flow stacks and you're going to be completely useless. And every time you move from pack of enemy to pack of enemy, you just have to kind of wait and reset, and you're just very weak as you wait for yourself to generate enough flow to go into Dragon Trigger. And all that burstiness that you saw with the 40k damage hit on the full power setup is completely nullified by the fact that you're just sitting there waiting for your flow to generate. And so instead on this build, we focus on being effective without the Dragon Trigger, 1, so that helps us to deal with trash mobs and not feel like we're wasting our Dragon Trigger on the trash mobs. That's number 1. And 2, it lets us jump from group to group to group and continue to play the game as we do it. We don't have to sit there and just twiddle our thumbs while we wait for our cooldowns to come back because we broke combat.
Ready yourself. The rooms are truly deadly from here.
Right, and so you can use the other Dragon Trigger skills in open world effectively. I would pretty much never hit the 3rd skill, so you have 1, 2, and 3. So the 5 is just moves you and gives you stab, so that's really good. The 4 gives you Aegis. Again, so this is just reactive utility to block stuff. We're going to let them go ahead of us. But the 1 is your big damage, the 2 is the one that moves you forward, and the 3 is the ranged one. So the 3 is a 50% damage hit, the 2 is an 80% damage hit, and then obviously the 1 is 100%. So basically you want to try to use 1, and I just timed this out there, but you want to try to use 1 whenever you can, but 2 is actually really effective if, like you saw, the mobs are spread out and you don't have a clear line. You can just use the 5 skill to reposition and then line across the room and smash and slash all of them at once, which is really effective and way more damage, again, than the 1 skill if you use it effectively and in the right circumstances. Again, I would always use 2 instead of 3. I think 3 is just weak and doesn't help you very much. Wow, this is a really popular dungeon today. Okay. Yeah. So that's Dragon Trigger, a little bit about Dragon Trigger. We're going to wait so that they progress through the rooms so that we can do this solo. But yeah, essentially this build is just set up for complete ease of use, and like I said, it's super tanky and survivable. So something we didn't talk about is, like, again, with the Mortal Dragon, we're getting prot as we charge our Dragon Trigger, which just helps us be super tanky again, and then it heals us for 8% of the damage we do. On top of that, we're running Relic of Zakiros, which heals us for the damage we do as long as we have Fury, and then we also have, again, the Banner of Defense, which gives us permanent regen uptime. And so you just have a lot of tools to outplay pretty much any scenario you could come across in the open world here.
The room of the Koi, once so peaceful. And after, one more room until victory.
That was brilliant. So you kind of want to aim, you want to, like, retarget to the farthest away mob if you use the 2. So if I like target here and then use the 2, then it'll get me all the way to the farthest mob and cut all the way across. And so that's something you can think about when you're playing Bladesworn. And there's just lots of really cool things you can do because of the way this build is set up. So like your 4 is an Aegis and a Reflect, so this is like reactive against like a powerful range attack. Also gives you Aegis, right? The 5 removes immobile because of the way we have warrior sprint set up. So this will remove like immobilization and get you towards your enemies. It also generates fury, so it's a great opener for the build. And yeah, so this build is just really, like, it just feels amazing to play, despite doing lower damage on the golem.
Restore our temple once more.
We spawn the big mob. I think this is where this setup specifically is the least valuable, is when you're fighting like a big healthy target. But again, I think what's good about it still is that you just have a lot of defensive options, and you don't feel pressured by these mobs, whereas on a full berserker setup, these things are going to be hitting you really hard and you're just not going to have the right answers if you can't burst them down quickly enough. So yeah, so that's the mini dungeon. As you can see, the health bar, my health bar pretty much never dipped during that whole time. We were just never in trouble at all during the mini dungeon. And I don't think that mini dungeon's hard by any means, but I think this build is just really useful in general open world. And wow, this armor looks really cool in the dark. But yeah. Okay, so that's like general open world play and why I think, despite the golem performance, why this build actually really shines in open world, especially in like large dense mob packs, as opposed to the regular berserker Bladesworn setup, because you can get away with running that if you're like super cool and good at the game and stuff, but I think ultimately it's less fun and less versatile, and you'll just eventually come across an instance of combat where the build, you just get one shot or you just don't have the tools you need, and this build fixes all of that. You just always have the tools you need to do something. The only thing you really don't have is CC, and you can kind of cheat that. You can take Rampage, which is just like completely cheating, and you can just go in here and do all your Defiant stuff that you need to do. So that's one way you can cheat. You can also just take more physical skills, so instead of like Banner Defense, you can take Stomp or something, or Bull's Charge, and that's really the only thing this build lacks, I think, is CC. But other than that, alright, so off to the next thing. And so one of the things that I don't talk about a lot on this channel is just like the ability to tackle like complex story bosses and just enjoying story and open world at the same time. I think Guild Wars 2 is best played as like a semi-solo RPG. Like if your build is set up for good soloing, you can still join in and enjoy the open world group stuff. But if you have your build set up this way, you're just able to enjoy every single aspect of Guild Wars 2 combat in the open world, with the exception of maybe instance content, and that's mostly just because the culture around instance content is so like controlled, and like there's just a lot of like you just have to do higher DPS in instance content, even though the content doesn't ask you. The people who play instance content want you to, and so you just have to, or you just get flamed. But anyway, so the next thing we're going to do is a story mission. So I really like to test open world builds in this story mission specifically. I think it just allows you to really understand the limitations of a build, and I think this build does decently well in this instance. So this is Secrets of the Obscure spoilers if you haven't played this story. It's pretty early on stuff, but yeah, just be advised, spoiler warning, Secrets of the Obscure story. There won't be that much story talk in here, and I'll leave the instance before I really let them get going. But
She's just ahead.
The air is particularly dense in here. Which one of you latched on to the wizard's souls?
Zosha, what are you doing? You brought the Harbinger to kill me?
They're here to help. They're a friend.
Hello, dog.
They're here to end me, as they've ended so many others.
I'll see if I can cast a barrier to keep her trapped. Don't want to lose her again.
Wow, she spawned like right on top of me. That's evil. So the reason I like this instance for testing builds is because it's kind of a combination of like mob combat and big boss combat. And so this is a really good instance to test like if your build has and yeah, she moves. That's the one thing is Bladesworn in this room is you can miss Dragon Trigger because she'll teleport away from you.
There are so many.
But at the end of the day, we have a build that's set up to properly handle that. Like, we're not completely useless.
Commander, don't let them overwhelm you.
There are too many of them.
Hold on.
We're not completely useless outside Dragon Trigger, basically, and so it's not as big a deal. When she teleports away from us. So like we can just full face tank this because we're cool like that. And obviously part of that's just because like the instance isn't that difficult, but
Whispering things. The color of the sky that big. The smell of smoke. Blood.
With me, Deca.
I don't know any of these faces.
Collect those orbs of light on the ground. I think she's leaving them for us. She's trying to help.
something I didn't talk about also on this build is that with some of the changes they made to the Gunsaber is like ranged. It's a ranged skill now. And so you do have access to ranged DPS if you need it. It's not good. Like, your DPS is going to be terrible just using the Gunsaber, but it at least allows you not to just sit there and look stupid when you can't melee the boss.
That's not my name. Don't call me that.
You've almost conquered on the sides. Keep pushing.
I don't know how much longer I can keep this up.
You can do it, Zoja.
I can imagine the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Oh, my thoughts are my own again.
You okay? No missing limbs?
An ache in my neck,
Alright.
but I'm fine,
I'm gonna leave
little
this.
one. This is the commander.
Okay. So we just relog to do that. But as you can see, just really useful. You can just adapt to the situation, and that's a good instance to test things. That instance is actually, if you just turn your brain off and let the Cryptus hit you, you can die pretty easily in there. If you're not prepared, if you're on like a full Berserker setup. So I think that's just a really good area to just kind of like idiot-proof your build a little bit. Like if you go in there and you struggle on your build, it means like something's off. It's because it's not a hard instance, but if your build goes in there and struggles, it means something about your build just isn't functional and isn't idiot-proof, and so you just need to adjust it a little bit. And that's why I like testing in there. But yeah, so as you can see, really useful in just like varied chaotic situations. You can adapt and adjust and respond to any situation in open world, in story, in group play, in solo play. And so the last thing, just to show you, like, hey, like this build, it can do the hard stuff, right? So we're just gonna do the Chalk Hero Point in Auric Basin in Heart of Thorns. And so again, these were designed as group content, but you can solo them now with power creep, and you could solo them before, but you can solo them pretty easily now with all the power creep that's in the game. Do we help this guy? Alright, so this is what I always do, is I always look to see if they're doing any damage. If they're not doing any damage, then I tend to help them. Okay, he's not doing any damage. We're gonna help him. And I Dragon Triggered a little early there. But yeah, okay. So we helped that guy. He could probably do it by himself. He didn't look like he was struggling, but when they're newer players, I don't like to just sit there and watch them struggle and die. If it was someone who had like higher mastery, that typically means like there's someone like doing it for practice. Like this person's probably just here to like meme, but we'll see. Okay, I think we're good. Alright, so we're gonna do this by ourselves now. And so as you can see, like the damage will be low, but we're just never in trouble in this instance with our setup. We just have too many answers to the problems that are arising from here. So we have CC, we have stun breaks, we have healing, we have resustain. So you can start to kind of see like just how much like quality of life and just ease of use there is on this build. And obviously we're taking the health bar down slowly, but like I said, that's because this build kind of struggles with like the solo bosses. It just doesn't do a lot of damage per second, but it's just really like it just feels amazing to play. Like there's no other way to like no amount of damage can compensate for a build that feels terrible. And I think the reverse is also true. Like when you just have all of these tools at your disposal, it just doesn't matter that it's taking longer to kill the bosses. You just feel powerful, and I think that's like the ultimate fantasy for Guild Wars 2, is just to feel like insanely powerful and like nothing can touch you. And so that's kind of what I really like. Again, like I said, instead of like a samurai like one hit one kill DPS like god, this is more of like a JRPG paladin. So think about that. Think about just being like ultra tanky, ultra survivable. You have an answer to every single thing the game can throw at you, with the exception of crowd control. And if you really if you were like, ooh, I just don't want to think about it, I just need some CC right now, you could literally just click into Unyielding Dragon. You're like, I'm tanky enough, I don't need the prot, I don't need the healing from this, I have the Relic of Zakiros, I have my other sustain tools. You can just switch into Unyielding Dragon to get more CC, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, so this is Celestial Power Bladesworn. Really fun build. Like I said, I think what was holding me back from recommending a Bladesworn build before was just like the fact that you're just so precision starved, like, and they just kept changing it. I had one that I really liked back when banners were quickness, like 1,000 years ago now. I had one that I really liked. I was almost ready to share it, and then they were like, and then they just nuked it. But yeah, so this is Power Bladesworn, really fun, really cool, and like I said, just like it just feels great to play. It just feels amazing, and again, it's one of the few builds that I don't feel like you need quickness to have a good time with, and that's really awesome to find in Guild Wars 2 in the modern age. I feel like it's just rare to find a build that doesn't need quickness to feel good, and this is one of those. And yeah, so this just adds to like the fact, like, I think Warrior is starting to be one of the best, most useful and like diverse classes. Like, it seems weird to say because Warrior's just like hit things like spin to win, go burr, but I think Warrior, like, this is like what, my 4th open world Warrior build now, and so you can just like it's allowed me to reinvest in my main, this Warrior main, and just like recognize like, hey, you have all the stuff you need to play the game pretty much on Warrior now. And so you could literally just solo Warrior in all circumstances at this point, using all my other builds too. But yeah, so this is Bladesworn. Sorry for ranting here at the end, but yeah, hopefully you like this build, and let me know what you think. See you later, bye!